where I teach macroeconomics to my students. Now, the purpose of this debate is that all of you learn, all of you engage in what is happening around all of us, and this will also prepare you for your, if you have interviews upcoming somewhere, it will also prepare you well for that. So this is, in my opinion, the best way to do that. Okay, so now I hope you all know the rules. All of you will get 5 minutes each to talk about the motion, which is that is the world headed towards a recession. Okay, so you get 5 minutes each to talk about it. I'm going to pick you one by one, and please stick to the allotted time. Please introduce yourself, and please take us through your ideas on is the world headed to a recession or not. All right. So we are going to start with Dhriti Dhar. Hi, Dhriti. Can you hear me? Sure. Dhriti, your mic is off. You're on mute. Okay, I think we can let someone else start till Dhriti prepares herself. Ekalabya Bhattacharya. Would you like to start?
Ma'am, am I audible?
Yes, you are. Just wait a minute.
Ma'am, I tried to put on the background, but it's glitching a bit. Can I just put on my default background because it's a bit?
Yeah, there is a problem.
Yes.
Please put on a default background.
Just a second, ma'am. It's better?
Yes. So, Ekalabya, welcome to today's session. And I'm going to start your time now. You have 5 minutes. Please take us through. Please start.
Ma'am, I would like to share my screen and add my PPT.
Yes, please do that. Just a second. Okay, you can share your screen now.
Ma'am, just a second, ma'am. Over here, it's showing someone is willing to enter the meeting.
Don't bother about that.
Okay, ma'am. Okay, ma'am. Ma'am, is my screen visible?
It's coming. Yes, it is now.
Okay, ma'am. So today we'll be discussing about the fact, firstly, I would like to provide a full disclosure of the fact that I am not personally a student of economics. I haven't really studied in a proper pedagogic manner or in the form of curriculum throughout my high school or even during my college years. I'm a student of literature, and I also take avid interest in social sciences. However, I find myself in this debate simply by virtue of my basic awareness regarding how our current economic situation and market is headed towards, and how I, as a citizen, is impacted by the economic developments of the world. So while we are discussing about whether our current global economy is headed towards a recession or not, I'd like to first start with a stakeholder analysis. Who are the stakeholders of the current global economy? Well, as we are living in the world today, a large influence is played by the petrodollar dominance in the way the market fluctuates, the market grows, and even the market recedes. Given the pandemic and the political and the geopolitical situations which followed after, we have seen there have been rapid fluctuations in the global market, and it has impacted our economic systems as we see it today. We live in an economic system which is largely capitalistic. Some form or variation of a capitalist economy is currently being followed by all major countries throughout the world who participate in the global economy and are major impactors or are majorly influenced by it. In that case, we are confronted with a sense of inequity. That is, the amount of influence certain big players have in the global economy is not the amount of impact that they face. Which is to say, for example, countries which directly influence our foreign exchange deficits and the reserves, and the countries which have their currencies as the official transactable currencies of global trade, they have a considerable amount of influence on the patterns of the global economy. For example, the USA, or as we are seeing recently after the current geopolitical crisis that the world is facing right now, the rise of the Russian ruble as a currency for trade in the global economy is also an important player. So as I move ahead, I'd like to basically get into certain basic factors. I'd like to focus on the semantics of it. As the motion suggests, is the current global economy headed towards a recession? I'd like to beg differ in this context, because I believe it's not headed towards. We as a society are living through a period of recession. As a society and as a market, we are living through a period of recession, and we need to take into account the diversities of different economic models as it's specific to various nationalities and national boundaries. And we need to also take into account the way we saw recession during the ages of the world wars, or during the years of Cold War, or successively. It's quite different from that. Right now, as the world is changing, we can see that various countries are facing recession in the very specific manner which is specific to that very specific country, and also their attempt at confronting that tendency is also very specific. Now, as I come down to my specific points of community identities, individual purchasing power, and status as an outcome of class-caste continuum in South Asia, I'd like to have the basic identity of how the recession, as we are seeing it in our current society, came into place. For that, we need to also take into account the inflation that's been going on in the Western markets, inflation that's going on in the global South and in the global North. When we take that into account, the inflation of the US dollar, the inflation of the Indian rupee, these two important players become influential factors in shaping our perception of recession as we are seeing in the world. When inflation occurs, we see that rupee or any currency rapidly loses its value. Our basic commodities become much more expensive. As people lose their purchasing power over time as members of a community, or when it even comes down to the level of the individual, there can be the possibilities or potentials of slower growth in economy. Now, as I forementioned in my speech, that given the pandemic and the successive geopolitical tensions in the world, this has hugely impacted the purchasing power of individuals and communities. And that has specifically impacted at the level of specific communities, the marginalized communities, their accessibilities to resources of the country or of a society in general. So this disparity in purchasing power has also led to a disparity in the experience of the inflation, and therefore leading to greater and more holistic impact of the recession as we are perceiving today. And as I come to the final point of my speech, that is status as an outcome of caste-class continuum in South Asia, the way we view the value of a commodity in an Indian family or in a family in South Asia, that has largely been shaped not only simply by our class, not only simply by our economic status, but also as a conformity, as a method of resilience and retaining our caste identity. When we take these
your time's up.
Ma'am, I'll be wrapping up within then few seconds. Okay. As we take that into account, we come to the conclusion that owing to certain disparities and inequities in the global society, we are already in a situation of recession rather than heading towards one. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ekalavya. All right, so that was our first speaker, and powerful speaker at that. So he's a good speaker. All right, let's take it with Dhritidhar. You want to go now? You're ready now? Okay.
Ma'am, am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Okay, so good evening, ma'am, and all my fellow debaters present here. I'm Jyoti Dhar. I'm from Loreto College, Kolkata. I would like to speak for the motion, is the world headed towards a recession? Now, there are several points which will support the motion I'm about to speak about, and several newspaper giants and news broadcasters like CNN, WION, Forbes, CNBC, Business Today, and the Indian Express have all chosen to, I don't know, write for this thing that the world is indeed headed towards a global recession. And before starting, I would like to point out that I will be using some points which I have chosen from their reports. So the first thing, the major point which I would first like to highlight is that according to a report published by CNN Business News, that the strengthening of the US dollar has led to currencies like UK pound, euro, Chinese yuan, and Japanese yen to fall. And this is, and obviously the Indian rupee is also there. And this is making it difficult for those nations to import various goods from America, of course. And central banks, in a bid to fight the surging inflation and shore up their own currencies, have hiked up their interest rate. And like this degree of synchronity in raising interest rates by the central banks has not been seen for almost 5 decades. So this can be a major reason why the global economy may be heading towards recession. And according to a report by Indian Express, if this thicket of threat continues to intensify, the world economy faces one of its weakest years since 1970, which was a period of intense stagflation around the globe. Now, another point which I would like to highlight is that the IMF, International Monetary Fund, has warned that economic prospects have darkened significantly due to the war in Ukraine, high inflation all over the world, and a resurgent pandemic inflicted pain on every continent. So according to IMF's global growth projections, total output will fall to 3.2% in 2022 from 6.1% last year, and growth is expected to slow even further in the next year. Now, underdeveloped or poor economies, which have their exports of grains and cooking oils from Russia and Ukraine, have been majorly disrupted by war, and they are already struggling to cope with a food crisis and a surge in food costs. And apart from this, the UN Conference on Trade and Development has said, and I quote, focusing solely on a monetary policy approach without addressing the supply side issues in trade, energy, and food markets to the cost of living crisis may indeed exacerbate it. So developing nations like Asia could bear the brunt of it majorly. So, and not as a conclusion, maybe as another point, I would like to add that according to a report published by WION or the World is One News, the UN has warned of an impending global slowdown that may likely be worse than the financial crisis in 2008 and the COVID shock of 2020. So, and of course, the Federal Reserve has risen the interest rates, as I began with, and this is definitely one of the most important points, and this has been highlighted by almost all newspapers, that this further strengthening of the US dollar will affect the global economy massively, because imports by all other countries will become a lot expensive, and even corporate America has started to control their expenditures, because they have already reduced the production of Apple iPhone 14, and obviously this could mean the loss of job for quite a few people all across the globe. And okay, ma'am, I'll just conclude. Yeah, so I would just conclude by saying that the global economy is indeed heading towards recession.
All right, thank you so much, Diti. So we got your points that your interest rates are rising everywhere, but the supply side is not being taken into account. So yeah, we are in a bleak situation because price rises are there everywhere.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Thank you so much for your well put in, well collated thoughts. So let's go to the next speaker. Satyam, would you like to go next?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, Satyam, just a minute.
Uh,
Just give me a minute. All right, Satyam, it's very dark where you are. You need to be in some light.
yes, ma'am. Actually, I am some different situation.
Okay.
That's why I cannot. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, no problem. You want to go?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, please do.
Hello, ma'am, and hello, everyone. This is Satyam Chaube. I am pass out from Banaras Hindu University, BA Honors, Political Science student. And as we know that we are participating in debate competition for is this global world is going towards recession, then I would like to put some points on this topic. Before putting my points, I would like to just refer some basic meaning of recession. Basically, the meaning of recession is contraction in global per capita GDP for approx 2 consecutive quarters can be refers as a recession, and we know that it's not so common phenomena. And before 30 years, the time it is about 8% of the time it happened in before 30 years. And now I'm going to put my points. Then the first and most important point is GDP. As we know that in the GDP growth rate was in 2021 was 6% approx, and in 2022 in third quarter it is now 2.6, and we are predicting that it will go down continuously. Then it is the important factor that our growth rate is continuously slowing down. Then a second point can be like consumer price index. The latest data of consumer price index is in October is positive 7.7%, which is sky high, too much high, and it is continuously going high. Then it is showing that the price rate is going high. The third point is US dollar. It is quite important factor that we know that the US dollar affect the world economy and international finance, and we know that it is continuously going stronger and stronger from 2 decades. It is at the stronger point before over 2 decades, and we know that there is a effect of strongerness of US currency, US dollar on the stabilizing of Wall Street, and it will just go down the incomes of those 500 companies in Wall Street. If there is a 1% rise, there is a survey that if the 1% rise in US dollar, then there will be minus 0.5% lower in the earnings of those 500 companies in Wall Street. Then it is also the factor. And then the fourth factor is, ma'am, ISM manufacturing index, which is currently showing that in September that it is at the point 50.2. At the basically weakest point, the rise of manufacturing growth is at the weakest point of the at least 2.5 before the 2.5 years. The last point is, ma'am, unemployment rate. Ma'am, currently the unemployment rate is 3.7%, which is quite good. Then I'm concluding my points. Before uh, unemployment rate, all the other trackers for recession is showing that the world economy is going towards recession, highly recession. But if we look at the point unemployment rate, then we can get to know that the unemployment rate is at quite good level. Means the conclusion is the world is going towards recession, but the effect of the recession may not be that much higher like in 2007 to 9. That's all, ma'am. Thank you.
All right, Satyam, I can see that you are under the street light and you had no other means of being. I am very, very inspired by you that you came, you delivered, you didn't, it's very inspiring. Your points were great. All your data that you gave, which showed that there's a price rise, there's a GDP fall, unemployment is rising, the Wall Street is earning, the Wall Street is going down. They're all very great insights, and I'm extremely inspired by your delivery today, Satyam. Many, many congratulations.
Thank you, ma'am.
All right, next, let's go. Tariq Zafar.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, 1 minute, Tariq.
Okay, am I audible, ma'am?
Yes, you are.
So,
Tariq, your screen just froze. Tariq? Okay, I think Tariq is facing some internet issues. We'll wait for him to sort it out. In the meantime, let's have Yash. Yash Kumar.
Good evening, ma'am.
Good evening, Yash. All right, Yash. Please.
Yes, ma'am. Am I audible? Good evening to my fellow members and fellow debaters. I will start my topic with the causes of recession, indicators of recession, and I'll explain some other important points right now. The causes of recessions are economic shocks, loss of consumer confidence, high interest rates, and sudden stock market crash. And the indicators of recessions are decline in real GDP, rise in unemployment, decline in consumer spending. Recession basically means that if for two sessions, like we have 4 sessions in a year, so for 2 sessions continuously, if the GDP contracts regularly for 6 months, then this is we can say it as a recession. A very renowned economist, Nouriel Roubini, he has said that in a normal recession, a stock market crashes from 30% approx. But in current situation, it can lead to 40% fall in the stock market. So, and he's the one who predicted the 2008 recession. So we can say that we are in recession actually. But I would like to add that India has a good chance of using this opportunity to world is shifting to China +1 policy, which recently our IT minister, Railway and IT Minister Ashwini Vaishnaw said that iPhone will be manufactured in India, in Bangalore, I think Bangalore. I don't remember the exact city name. So, sorry, city, I'm saying, sorry for that. But he said that 60,000 people will be employed in that in an iPhone factory. So India is, as IMF also said, that India is a bright spot in the current scenario, because we are still in the top economies, top performing economies. But recession will come, because as it is said that when US sneezes, the world catches cold. and US is the leading economy in this world. So when inflation rises, countries generally increase their interest rates, and increase in interest rate leads to decrease in money supply, so that it decreases demand and inflation decreases. But it decreases demand, but decrease in demand impacts the growth as well. Increase in interest rates makes loan difficult, and for companies or countries, and increase in demand, increase in interest rate decreases demand, which will lead to decrease in earning of the government and corporates. Currently, US said that central banks of America made a target of reducing inflation to less than 2%, which is an impossible target to achieve. But if they try to do this, US Federal Reserve increased their interest rate by 75 basis points, that is 0.75%, and it is expected to increase in 0.5% more by December. And interest rate in US will be around 4% to 4.25%. So, and this will decrease the value of our currency and for our forex reserves. If US goes into recession, demand in US will decrease, and US is a largest trade partner of India. So I'm talking in the aspect of India and US, though the topic was the global recession, but since US is a very large economy and India is a very emerging economy, so I'm mainly concluding, having the topics which are related to our countries and US. Reasons for global recession was that pandemic. While we were recovering from it, Russia-Ukraine war started, which led to rise in price of natural gas, fuel, wheat. Since Russia was largest exporter of wheat, zero COVID policy in China currently is, since China is a producer of world, large producer of world, this zero COVID policy in China will impact the recession very badly, since the supply chain will disrupt. And the threats in cost of productions will also, this is also an issue which will lead to inflation and then recession. Threats to in cost of production is that deglobalization. Now China is and countries are focusing on their own country instead of globalization, which was the concept that everything is interrelated. But now countries are focusing on themselves. They are focusing on that I will import, I will use my things, I will produce myself. Everything is like we want to do by ourselves. Okay, ma'am, I will conclude the topic. So my conclusion is that recession is surely going to come, but it has a great chance that India has a great chance to use this opportunity. Thank you, ma'am.
You touched on many points, and all of them are relevant. You talked about all the nations putting themselves first instead of looking at a global economy. It's America first, India first, China first, and so on. You talked about how COVID is impacting inflation. You talked about how Russia is impacting, Russian production is low, Chinese production is low, interest rates are going up to control inflation, and so on, and how all of that is going to, we are in a recession, and how all of that is going to lead to a recession. So great points. I think a great amalgamation of all the reasons why we are in a recessionary situation. Great, Yash. Thank you so much for your efforts. Okay, Tariq, are you ready? Would you like to try again?
Yes, ma'am. There was a network issue and disconnected.
No problem.
So should I begin?
Yes.
Am I audible, ma'am?
Yes.
My name is Mohammad Tariq Zafar, and I will speak on the given topic. So, an old economist joke is that recession is when someone else loses their job, and a depression is when you lose your job. There is no proper or universal definition of recession, but in generally, a recession is a significant decline in the economic activity spread across the economy lasting for a few months, and normally visible in real GDP, real income, and employment and industrial production. On the basis of this definition, we have events, facts, and data, which shows that, yes, the world is lead towards a recession. And we know that there is three major economic powerhouses, and if there is slight difference and there is slight instability in their economic and political activities, change the whole world and affect the whole world's economy. On the so we should begin with the first powerhouse and the biggest economy, which is America. Yes, the America headed towards a recession. Data shows that the consumer prices are 8.3% in USA and annual inflation is 6.2%, which is more than required inflation. And wage growth is at an all-time high of nearly 5.5%. And the bewildering point is that USA's Consumer Price Index report says that inflation is 9.1%, highest since 1981. So move to the another powerhouse, which is none other than China. China's prioritization of political control over economic growth and China's harsh and threatening military exercise over Taiwan put the supply chain into a great threat. And Russia and China's issues are leading companies around the world to shorten their supply chain and make it simple. The effect of Russia's invasion of Ukraine, lockdown, deepening the real estate crisis, pushed growth rate to the 3.3% this year, the slowest than in the 4 decades. And when we are talking about the economies, so the Eurozone, that Britain and Germany, we see currently how they has been affected and the Liz Truss has been thrown and the responsibility given to Rishi Sunak. The Economist and Bloomberg magazine says that Britain economy is taking a drubbing, while the Germany's economic minister says that Germany is going through a serious emergence energy crisis, one that slowly turning into an economic and social crisis. Now, if we are talking about these world economies and the powerhouses of the world, then how we can forget about the India? Yes, India may bear an output loss of 7.8% in 2023. And International Monetary Fund says that India is projected to grow 6.8% in the current fiscal year, following 8.7% growth rate in fiscal year that ended in March 31st. And one of the another point which is indicating the position of economy is strengthening dollar, weakening rupees by 2.55%. And the same thing goes on other currencies like yuan and other different countries, different currencies. So one another indicator of the, as we discuss about the employment, which is included in the definition. So there is a job cut. There is 1.3 million layoffs only in the US in past few months, according to CNBC. Meta fired 11,000 employees, Amazon 10,000, Twitter 50% of their employees, and Microsoft 1,000. And these are the biggest giant companies. Their record is on the record, and what is off the record, only God knows. Again, and director of Johnson & Johnson company says that all these job cuts amid inflation pressure and strengthening US dollar. And we also have the world reports, different organizations and their reports. UN says that the Eurozone growth has been revised down to 2.6% this year and 1.2% in 2023. Due to rising food and energy prices this year amid war, the inflation is anticipated to reach 6.6% in advanced economies and 9.5% in the third world economy, or we can say emerging markets. All these data, report, and event says that the world is switching its position from its orbit towards the recession. And UN Conference on Trade and Development warned that the world is on the edge of recession.
Your time is up, Tariq.
Ma'am, a few minutes to wrap up all these things.
Mhm.
Few seconds. Speculation of recession sounded more like a conspiracy, but now it looks like a destiny. I just recap all these things: war, COVID-19, food, energy crisis, migration. All these things shows as the recession is inevitable. Okay, while there is a general consensus on the impeding global recession, many analysts predict to it happens sometime in 2023, but no one knows how severe it will be and how will it long last. Quoting a quote from James Keynes, I change my mind when facts change. What do you do? Will you stand with me or stand by the James Keynes? Thank you, man. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Tariq. I think that was an excellent debate presentation by you. You put in many beautiful points about how the production is being disrupted, how unemployment is rising, and your way of speaking was also very nice. So very nice, Tariq.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, everyone.
All right. Now, Dhriti Arora.
Am I audible and visible, ma'am?
Yes, you are.
So I'll start. The cost of almost everything from food to fertilizers is so causes consumers to spend less. As the governments aim to bring down the cost of living, containing inflation without pushing economies into a slowdown is difficult. Good evening to one and all present here. I, Dhriti Arora, I'm a final year student from the Vivekanand Institute of Professional Studies, and I'll be speaking in favor of the motion that yes is headed towards a recession. So let me start by explaining what is no particular definition like one of my fellow contestants said, but a period of temporary economic decline during which trade and industrial activity are reduced, generally which is identified a fall in GDP in two successive quarters can be called as a recession. Now, when we talk about economic growth, first thing that comes into our mind is the GDP growth, the growth in numbers. And if I quote numbers from the International Monetary Fund, the global growth is forecast to slow from 6%, which was in 2021, to 3.2% in 2022, and further of 2.7% next year, which is 2023. Now, this is the weakest growth profile since 2001, except for the global financial crisis and the acute phase of COVID-19 pandemic. The pandemic, right? The start of everything. And the buzzword for this year, the buzzword inflation. Many countries around the world today are struggling with inflation. And one of the biggest, when COVID-19 struck, countries around the world were lockdowns, factories were shut down, the workplaces were closed, and the supply chain was disrupted. And during this time, the government stepped in and provided made massive investments, provided support to the people. They pumped to the economy to prevent it from collapsing and to keep the economy alive. And the consequences, despite all the money going around, since there were fewer businesses operating, they couldn't quite keep up with the post-pandemic pace, and the prices are going up as a result. If I talk about the numbers, US inflation rate 7.7%. India inflation rate 6.77%. UK inflation rate 11.1%. 10.4% for Russia, which is in itself a major cause of this inflation. Russia and Ukraine are the food basket for Europe, and this war has led to a higher commodity and energy prices, not just for Europe, but for all the importers of energy from these two countries. And now, the governments all across the globe are trying to curb curb this in starting the Federal Bank of US recently. Now, this increased interest rates would mean that people would withdraw their investments from the developing countries or from the less developed countries and invest in US. And in response to this, to stop this capital flight, the developing economies are raising their own interest rates to match with the US. So this again puts a lot of pressure on the domestic currency as the US has strengthened in the past few months. And recently, if I talk about India, the rupee hit an all-time low of 83 rupees against the US dollar. Now, all of these indicate that yes, we are headed towards a recession. And now comes a quick question. Data forecast suggests that we might face a slowdown, but not just a recession yet. And the Reserve Bank of India even said that India might be better positioned to mitigate the stagflation in comparison to other countries. So this was all from my side. Thank you so much for listening to me.
Wow, Jyoti, you wrapped up within time. Thank you. But as everyone, great points there. Great points about how inflation in the developed countries is being controlled by interest rate hikes in them, and then to mitigate that, there is interest rate hikes in developing countries. There's capital flight. Of course, the points about Russia and Ukraine and all your other points. I think they were so well put, so well thought across, and very well spoken. Very well spoken.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
All right, now let's have another speaker, Sonal.
Yes, ma'am. Am I audible and visible?
Yes, Sonal, you are.
Hello, everyone. My name is Sonal Mohapatra, and I will be speaking for the motion, Is the world headed towards a recession? What is recession? A recession is a significant decrease in economic activity that can last for months or even years. It is when a nation's economy sees a negative gross domestic product, increasing the levels of unemployment and a decline in retail sales, contracting measures of income and manufacturing for a longer time. Recession comes with a slowing of growth. Under the baseline forecast, growth slows from last year's 6.1% to 3.2% this year and 2.9% next year. Downgrades of 0.4 and 0.7 percentage points from April. This reflects a stalling growth in the world's three largest economies, that is the United States, China, and the Europe area. In the United States, reduced household purchases, power, and tighter monetary policy will drive growth down to 2.3% this year and 1% next year. In China, further lockdowns and the real estate crisis pushed down to 3.3% this year. In the Europe area, growth is revised down to 2.6% this year and 1.2% in 2023. Inflation rise. Inflation this year is anticipated to reach 6.6% in the advanced economies and 9.5% in the emerging market and developing economies. Upward revisions of 0.9 and 0.8 percentage points respectively. And it is projected to remain elevated longer. And this is according to an IMF report. The risks of the below points are overwhelmingly high towards the downside. That is the war in Ukraine, that is, it is leading a sudden stop of European gas flows from Russia. Inflation would remain stubbornly high if the labor markets remain overly tight or inflation expectations de-anchor or the disinflation proves to be more costly than expected. Third, the tighter global financial conditions could induce a surge in debt distress and emerging market and developing economies. Fourth, renewed COVID-19 outbreaks and lockdowns might further suppress the China's growth and cause more of inflation. Fifth, rising food and energy prices could also cause a widespread food insecurity and a social unrest leading to inflation. Sixth is the geopolitical fragmentation might impede the global trade and the cooperation. When would recession hit? While there is a general consensus that on the impending global recession, many analysts predict it to be happening in sometime in 2023. But as of now, there are no predictions about its severity and about its duration. I would conclude by saying that while the world downs in recession, India is forecasted to be the least affected country, as the 2023 real GDP predictions are to be 6.1%, while that of other countries like USA being 1%, Europe being 0.5%, Russia being negative of 3.5%, China 4.6%, Japan 1.7% respectively. Thank you.
Well, Sonal, you wrapped it up in under 4 minutes. So great points there, Sonal, about all the reasons why we are in a recession, we are headed to a recession, and also about that the time nobody can predict, and economists also may not be able to correctly predict when it's going to hit us, how hard. But yes, India may be least impacted. Our own population is our own domestic economy is very strong, so we may be the least impacted. All right, thank you so much, Sonal, for your points.
Thank you, ma'am.
All right, Ekta.
Ma'am, am I audible?
Yes, Ekta, just a minute. Could you switch on your video, please, Ekta?
Yeah.
Your screen is frozen now, Ekta.
Am I visible?
Yeah, but
yes, ma'am. I think it's the internet connection.
Yeah.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, ma'am. I am Ekta Agarwal, and I do believe that the world is heading towards the recession. For the disclaimer, I'm not from economic background. So before I could believe that what the world is heading into, I first investigated what is a recession, and I came up with the definition, and I think that definition and the characteristics which defines the recession is now the reality of the global economic atmosphere. Recession, by definition, is a contraction in the global GDP, and it is identifiable in a consecutive 2 quarters, which is a very technical reason for why is it given the 2 quarters. And now, if I think about it, India, for example, it was expected to grow at 8.7% for the financial year 2023, which then contracted to 7.5%, and then it was later revised to 7% by the RBI. The world, which was set to grow at 24%, if not the pandemic, is now revised to grow at the 17%, and it causes a loss of $17 trillion, which is about the 20% of the income of the world population. So we can understand how severe this situation is. Today, come in the early news, we listen to the news and I get to know that the UK has hit all-time high in 41 years. Inflation rate, which stood at 11.1%. And with this, all the advanced economies in the world, such as US, is now racing to curb the inflation rate. The US has increased its interest rates by 75 basis points, and it is claimed as the most aggressive monetary tightening policy of the US in past decades. So now we have to understand what characteristics of the recession is actually playing that all of us now agree that we all are heading towards a recession. First of all, characteristics of recession is a contracting GDP, and now we saw how the output has contracted from 23% to 17%. Second, lower level of unemployment. Third, contracting level of income. Fourth, contracting level of manufacturing and businesses. Fifth would be yes, these are already points. Now we have to understand how we have to understand each point equally. Now the US has increased its interest rates. That would mean the higher the higher interest rates attracts growth. But at the same time, it has adverse effect on the currencies of the rest of the world. For example, India, Indian rupees. Japan seen how India
Ekta, we can't hear you. I think your internet connection is a little bad right now. So we'll have to let Ekta come back. Ekta? Yeah, we lost you in the middle, Ekta. You're on mute.
Yeah, ma'am, can I continue?
Yes.
Yes. So I was saying that the advanced economies such as United States has increased their interest rates to curb the inflation, and which is claimed as to be the most aggressive monetary tightening policy by the US in past decades. But as the US practices this policy, we have to understand what impact has it had on the rest of the world. The higher the interest rate, the more attractive is the currency to the investor, and that would make the US dollar more stronger, and is making it stronger. But it has adverse impact on the rest of the world. The Indian rupees, the Chinese yuan, all are witnessing the adverse effect of the interest rates hike by the US. And in order to stabilize the currency of our own home, RBI has hiked up our interest rate from 4.4% to 5.9%. In the series of the decision, it has practiced to curb the inflation and stabilize the economy. Interest rates, the hikes in the interest rates is not limited to the weakening of the currency. It impacts have suffered pandemic and then the Russian-Ukraine war. To the savings of the people, and the consumer is not consuming further. Interest rate at the same time is also discouraging the consumer from applying from the consumer from the expenditure such as that includes the loans and the mortgages. This is what we call, this is the consumer side. At the same time, the massive layoffs by the industries in response of the higher interest rate has also further worked towards the discouragement of the consumer expenditure, low income and the low incentives. That is our consumer expenditure side. Now the investments, losing of the confidence in the market, the investors are now pulling their investments back, and it might results into a stock crash. The business cycles. In 2021, the business cycle boomed in spite of the growing inflation because the demand stayed up. The consumer was able to buy the goods and services from the pockets and from the reserve money they had. But now they are exhausted. The business has no other way to pass their input cost and now has to bear the loss. So this is the dip in the business cycle. Now that we have crossed all the characteristics of the recession,
Ekta, I think we lost you again, but we'll have to wrap up your talk. If you would like to make a concluding statement, we got all your points, and I think you should have studied economics because you were very good. You understood all aspects. You talked about consumer confidence. You talked about investments. You talked about everything. I think under the book. So I think it was. I didn't feel at all that you were not an economics student. You understood money supply. You understood everything. So I think that was great. And if you want to make a concluding remark, because we were losing you again and again, please go ahead.
Yes, what I'm saying is that if I think about it, we can categorize our whole global economy in three cards: the advanced economy, the emerging economies such as India, and the lower economy such as Sri Lanka, Somalia, which is actually being hit by the recession the most. They are working towards the lower income countries, and the lower middle income countries are working towards the lower income, and also the mounting public debt they have, and the mounting public debt they have, and this is all making up the severity of the recession. So I would like to say that yes, we are heading towards the recession, and it is a high time we should think about the structuring of the business environment so that we can be resilient in such time. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ekta. Thank you. All right, so I think we have the last speaker remaining, and that is Siddharth Chabria. Siddharth, are you ready?
Yes. Good afternoon to everyone. Good evening.
Good evening.
I would like to speak for the motion that the world is indeed heading towards a recession. Without going into the numbers, I would like to present a narrative, a story about why we are, like what causes the way we are heading towards a recession. Firstly, we are, as my fellow members have already stated, that what is recession and what constitutes a recession, the definition of it. So I'm not going into it. Rather, what has been predicted that the recession is going to hit in next year. And unlike what we saw in 2020, it's not going to be caused by any natural causes, which was beyond human control, like the coronavirus, but it is like going to be manufactured, and the manufacturing is mostly being done by all the central banks in the world, primarily the US Federal Reserve. Now, coming to the GDP part, so what constitutes the GDP? So, if being an economics student, ma'am, I think you would understand that it is comprised of the consumer plus investment plus government plus the net exports that we make. So, we have to ask first who is actually going to face the recession and how severe it is going to be. If we talk about the US and UK, yes, they are going to face a major burn from this recession because apart from their consumer, the investment and the government expenditure are like coming down. While if we talk about India, I don't think we are going to face that much of heat from this recession because our consumer demand is very strong, and being that the recent investment that all the money flowing into the Indian economy, so our GDP is going to be much more stable, and like we won't be as hardly hit at the other two nations. Now, I would like to say that this recession is mainly going to be a result of the failure of the monetary policy by the central banks and also taken by the government while taking lag in reopening the economy at the right time. So what happened is that during the coronavirus, as the economy was closed and people had the economic activity basically stopped. So the central bank, looking at it, printed more dollars and started constituting what we known as the quantitative easing in finance. So where they print dollars and buy assets to get more cash into the hands of people. So what it made that there was more dollars in the hands of the people around the globe, but there were very few shortage of goods that could match that dollar. So what happened is that demand exceeded the supply, and it led to a it led to high prices in goods and services, and as we are seeing till now. So the central bank avoided it in the first place and saying that it was not transitory, and they kept the interest rate low so that people keep spending cash and take credit, and and was leveraging up the economy until a certain point that they realized that it is not going to last, and inflation is going to be like not transitory anymore. It is becoming permanent, and like they have been lenient for too long. So now they decided to pull it back. So what happened, what followed was that they, on their commentary, they started giving aggressive stance that they would be hiking rates, stopping all the free flow of dollars in the economy. And that created a major panic in the market. As we all know that the market, except for the Indian market, mostly which was not that hit, US market and unit market had fell sharply. Along with that, there was another elephant in the room, which was the Russia-Ukraine war. So because of that, the energy prices and food prices went up. Now, what the central bank cannot control is the prices of food and energy, because interest rate cannot control that. So now the Federal Reserve has to focus on the other parts of the inflation, like the things we demand, the investment part, which is all made by controlled by the interest rate, the housing market, and other things like that. So the central bank really wants to kill that demand part. So what they are doing is that they're going to hike interest rate very aggressively going forward, even though they're not looking at that much because they cannot control the supply part of it regarding the food and energy. So they are going to really kill demand, and that killing of demand would lead us into a recession. So I would say that a recession is necessary if we expect the prices of the goods we are spending it to come down or to cool down. And given the massive layoffs we have started seeing, and we can already feel the consensus that even the business outlook is not that great, and even the business people are feeling that we are actually heading for a slowdown. So to conclude, I would say that this year and the next year was meant for a revival of positivity, the so-called reload we were expecting, but that has not occurred for most of the world, and it still looks gloomy. So, in spite of the late 2021 narrative towards optimism, we might have to wait a little longer. Thank you.
Siddharth, I think that was so well put up and very thought-provoking about how you link the fact that there was quantitative easing during COVID, which was kind of necessary also to help businesses, and but it has led to inflation, which then is being countered by high interest rates, and how all of that is contributing towards where we are headed now. So thank you so much for your thoughts, everyone. So I cannot, I cannot express how great this session has been for me also, how enlightening it has been, how nicely so many of you put together all the things that were going on in the economy. Some person linked something, some other person linked something, and here we have such a wholesome, such wholesome arguments on why there are not one, but so many reasons on why we are going towards a recession, or the causes of recession. So there's if somebody's talked about the war, someone's talked about China zero COVID policy, someone's talked about how the fact of quantitative easing, how interest rates are going up, or Wall Street is coming down, how earnings are affected, and so on. So we have this beautiful group which has put together all these things, and whether it's from economics or non-economics, I think all of you have been able to understand the topic well. And I was told that I'm supposed to also pick a winner, choose a winner, and I don't think I'll be able to do that, because I think the effort of each one of you was so good, so meaningful, and so good to hear in the short time that you all had. The way you all presented it, I was very inspired by it. And I think from this debate, instead of picking and choosing a winner, what we can take together is the fact that this is as you know, some of you are non-economists who came and who took part in today's session, about how economics is an applicative science. How if you apply what you learn, is that's the only way to learn. So I think I would really encourage all of you. You are on the path already, since you took part in a voluntary debate about an economics topic. You are on that path, and I would encourage you all to continue on this path. Continue reading all these articles that you are reading. Continue joining the dots. And hopefully in you, we will find our future economists who can help us in situation. Like someone pointed out, this is a supply side situation, which has now become a demand side situation. So we need ways in which we can boost production rather than just trying to increase interest rate and pull down demand, which is the only way to cool inflation right now. So I don't think I'm qualified to pick a winner. I think all of you are winners. And from our side, all of you will get certificates of participation that of the effort that you put in, and I hope it helps you in whatever small manner it can. So we are going to be sending you out certificates and of appreciation for your efforts. We are going to be if there's anything else from our side you require, we'll be happy to do that. So I'm going to conclude this session today. I'm going to stop this meeting now. And anyone, I think Tariq wanted to leave because you have dinner. Please, Tariq, you don't have to ask me. Just please leave. So everyone, thank you. All the very best. And take care, everyone. And your certificates will arrive soon. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the session, ma'am.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Ma'am, it was really great to participate in this debate.
It was so nice.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye,
Thank you
ma'am.
for this opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you for participating, everyone, regardless of where you were, regardless of everything. Thank you.